Hello there, my name's Daniel and welcome to this video. I'm going to be sharing now lots of different ideas on religions of the world and philosophies. This was something that I've been planning to do as soon as August came, and it has finally. And I feel in myself that I've been able to achieve the things I wanted to achieve in order to be able to do this. And I'm very grateful and I'm very humbled to be able to start sharing things that I've learned in these last 4 or 5 years on religion and philosophy. This isn't a place where I'm trying to convert or persuade a particular idea. Rather, taking my cue from Alan Watts, it's entertainment. I'm just the bartender offering different types of drinks, and it's up to you whether you want to drink it or not, and that's it. And if you drink it and if you like it, then great. If you don't, great as well, So if there's anything I do say and it's wrong, if it's completely misunderstood, if I've misunderstood it, then this channel is a learning channel. So by all means, write in the comment section so I can read and learn from those things as well. Knowledge is power, and the most important thing to me is seeking truth. Not in the sense of I'm wanting to find one day God to write in the sky, I exist, but rather knowing more about me, because from my experiences of studying religion and philosophy, I've found that there's so much more colour within me. There's so much more colour out in this external world, and that's just been awesome. So if someone can give more clarity, I suppose is what I'm trying to say here, to see better, both out in the world or within, I'm down for that. So today we're going to be talking about the Atman. And the Atman is one of the central themes and ideas within the Hindu faith. The Atman, I suppose, could be described as the equivalent of the soul, the Christian idea of the soul. I remember there's a verse in the Bible where Christ said, "What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul?" Or spirit. Soul and spirit, I've heard those. I see soul and spirit as the same thing personally, and I'm not sure if that's because I've been so influenced now by Eastern ideas of non-duality, but then again, I still don't really understand the full concepts of soul and spirit, and there are plenty of more in the more Western world, I think, where I've heard those two words spoken in two different ways. But if I say soul or spirit, in regards to talking about the Atman, I mean just one thing. And the Atman is the you, the real you. The Atman is described and seen as the thing that is eternal. It never had a beginning, and it never had an end. The Atman is something that you cannot experience with your 5 senses. And yet, paradoxically, it's so much more intimate and closer than you realise. And this is why meditation in the Hindu scriptures is very important, as well as actually. So before I go further on this kind of idea, I'm going to be talking about the Atman from the Bhagavad Gita. Ideally, from my understanding and research, if you want to do an actual proper study of the Atman, you want to be reading the Upanishads, because that's literally what they're all about. Is how does one obtain, how does one awaken, realize the true self, the Atman? How does one connect himself to Brahman. And Brahman and Atman, they're like two opposing things. They sound, they're two things, not two opposing things, but two things, but really they're one. And we'll talk about this as we go on in this video. But I'm going to be talking about the Atman from the Bhagavad Gita because it's really... So from all my studies of religion so far, the Gita has been my main pulling influence. I'm always drawn back to the Gita, which I'm quite surprised by, really. But that's cool. There is something within this book that really resonates with me, and this is so subjective to say, but this is why I love this sort of studying and journey, because truth, as much as I believe in objective truth, but it can't be fully objective. There has to be a degree of subjectivity in truth, because we're not all the same. We're all very, very different, and we all feel and think different things and see things differently. Like my understanding, for example, how do I know the way you see green is the same way as I see green? I can't prove it. I don't know how we could both agree that the colour green, only because I'm looking through the window right now, it's the same colour green as you see. So there is got to be some subjectivity here. So this discovery of, and for reasons that are still a little bit unknown to me, the Gita is a text that I really enjoy, and that's so cool because that's me talking. That's awesome. Anyway, so the Atman, I forgot what the previous points I've said. Oh yes, that's right. So the way to awaken the Atman is through meditation. And that can be very strenuous for a lot of people. I have to admit, I struggle with meditation still. And when I do get in the zone, then it's great. But I think it's just because of a lack of discipline and routine and habit. Maybe also because I'm kidding myself a little bit. I want to make the game a little bit harder. Maybe it's too, if I were to discipline myself, it'd be too easy to awaken the Atman. So my ego is saying, come on, get distracted with something else, so maybe I'm making it harder for myself. But also another way, and this is what the Gita talks about specifically, is something called Bhakti Yoga, which is an idea that you are serving God, and the way of service, which is done in a way, which is done as an off. So you can be enlightened, you can awaken the Atman through your actions, only if they are in service to God and they're not done with a motivation for its fruit, and that you're doing it solely because you want to be good and kind to the world, and it's as a worship offering to God. This then breaks the bonds of karma, and this is where ideas are going to overlap here. I'm not going to go into karma right now. Maybe we can do that as another video, but. So there are different ways to unlock, to awaken to go to a new to the level, to break the illusion and realize the Atman, the soul. Meditation and service. So the Atman, it's something that is, as I said, is eternal. It's something that cannot be influenced by the external world. It's something that cannot be influenced even by your own feeling and thinking. So quite a radical thing to say is that you are, the real you is not your thoughts and it's not your emotions. And that strikes an interesting, reflection, because then what are you? What are you? Just your thoughts and emotions? And if that's the case, then you are subject to constant change and fluctuations. You are, there is nothing permanent. There is nothing like a rock in a stream. You are just literally the stream. But in the Hindu faith, there is this eternal idea of, no, actually, you are the eternal rock that's always been there. And you are unchanged and unmoved by external circumstances. So to even get a glimpse of your real self is a very powerful thing, because it means that you won't be overstimulated by when things are going right, and you won't be devastated when things go bad. There's a great little, again, saying in the Bible where Paul says, now that Christ is in us, we can be perplexed, but we won't be crushed. We can experience all this terrible suffering and pain, but actually we have something that is of eternal value, and that keeps us going. And that's faith. That's hope for a future, which is different to awakening the Atman. Because once you're awakened, once you've achieved that moshka, you just are. Which is interesting, because in the Hindu faith, God is seen as something very different to the Western ideas of God. So the Western idea of God, namely in Christianity, is that God is a monarch. He is autocratic. He's a judge. He's a sovereign ruler over everything. Whereas in the Hindu faith, it's more pantheistic. There's God who has a personality, but then there's God who's in all of us, which is an interesting concept, because it means that we are not born corrupted, inherently corrupted. We are actually born perfect, which is nuts, because someone will say, well, clearly in this world there's a lot of shit that's happening in this world. So the Atman, thinking about this, the Atman could be seen as one of those sort of waxy leaves, like a lotus leaf, where the rain drops on the lotus leaf and it just falls off it, doesn't stick to it, it just falls off and it's dry again. And when we realise that we are this lotus leaf, all those external stimuli, all those good and bad things, they just drop off us. That doesn't make us like machines, far from it. But we are not swayed this way and that way. We're not sullied by our sin. We have dissolved the ego ideas of, I need to go on a quest to find me. I need to find the key to unlock the treasure box. Actually, no. The treasure isn't here. It was always here. You are the treasure. And another way that the Hindu faith see God is, and this goes more into the description of Brahman, which is more of the impersonal aspects of God. We are all Brahmin, or we are all Tao, which we can talk about Taoism for another video. What is the Tao? Paradoxical thing to ask. But Brahman, God, is the sea, and you are like this life right now. You are the wave rising up from the sea, and you stand out, you're distinctive, yada yada yada. You have a time frame of motion, but eventually, poof, you go back into the sea again. And so you're distinctive, but yet you're the same. The wave isn't its own thing. The wave is still the sea. So God is God, has its own individual characteristics, but God is also me, it's also you. God is the universe, which is a wonderful philosophy, because it feels then that there is no need for a sacrifice on the cross. There is no separation. There is no veil. There is no, you have to do this and that in order to get this. We're all connected. We're all one. It's a very powerful thing. And in chapter 5 of the Gita, and we'll go through a few verses in a minute in the Gita. Chapter 5 of the Gita is beautiful because there's a verse in there where it says, and we'll probably start this off in a minute with that verse, where the wise man, the man who's on the path of dissolving the delusions and the illusions, in that process starts to see that this precious, infinite, valuable thing called the Atman, the soul, is in the intellectual man, the snob kind of guy, but it's also in the man who lives on the streets. It's also in the cat that shits in your garden every day. The Atman is in everything that's living. And for all the things that are non-living, I guess it's in that as well. I've never really thought about that, actually, come to think of it. Don't think that would be though, I don't know. Anyway, for now we'll just say the Atman is in everything that's living. Could be wrong there though. So there's a wonderful philosophy behind the Atman, and it's something that has deeply influenced me. And so I'm not for one to label myself anything, but I do consider myself probably more on the lines of pantheism in terms of my understanding and believing in God. I don't necessarily subscribe to a total monotheistic autocratic ruler, although I just talked about that, in the Hindu faith there is a God who is his own personality and is Lord of everything. But I feel in my own self the God that I worship has less characteristics, less personality, and is more of the ocean rather than an individual person. And thankfully, in the Hindu faith, that's okay. There's a lot of space for that. So, but that's what feels good for me, and that's what sometimes I pray to, and will offer worship to. But it's more of like realizing that's who I am. I'm a precious person, which sounds terribly arrogant, but everyone else is equally precious as well, and just very precious. So that's where I feel I fit anyway. And it's like with Taoism. Again, I won't go too much into this, but Taoism has very similar ideas and principles to the Hindu idea of Brahman and Atman, which are the same thing. So we go back to the ocean analogy and the wave. The Atman is the wave and the Brahman is the ocean. They're just different ways of looking at the same thing. So let's go and look at some quotes from the Gita. Right, so we'll go to chapter 5. So this is chapter 5, verse... Where should we go from? Oh, actually, I've highlighted quite a lot of highlights on here. I think we're going to start from chapter 5, verse 15 down to 24, and we'll just talk about it as we go along. So this is, so who's talking here is, if you're not familiar with the Gita, this is Krishna, who is the incarnation of Shiva, who is God. Krishna is the equivalent, I guess, of crudely saying, of Christ, who is the incarnation of some God. Krishna's talking to Arjuna, who's one of the most important characters in the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna, just for time's sake, is looking and listening to Krishna as a disciple, and Krishna's the teacher. So verse 15, the Lord does not partake in the good and evil deeds of any person. Judgment is clouded when wisdom is obscured by ignorance. And so the quest even though I just contradicted myself from the beginning of this video, the quest, I'm going to say it anyway, is that one is to dissolve the illusions of the ego, that you are lacking something. You are everything. And ignorance is the cloud. Ignorance, if knowledge, there's that phrase, knowledge is power. And I'm not saying a book has the answers, but the book signposts and points you to where you need to go to get the answers. And so some practical advice would be that in order to dissolve and to clear the clouds, get your head into some of these sort of books like the Bhagavad Gita. It will clear away the clouds. It's pretty awesome stuff. And verse 16, but ignorance is destroyed by the knowledge of the self within. So as soon as we start to realize who we really are, that we are actually not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, we are not our circumstance, we are an eternal being. As soon as we start to wake up to the reality that we are God, that light shines outward, illuminates and dissolves these silly little notions, and you become so much more equanimous in yourself. You don't get pushed over by circumstances. They're always there. People don't like change. People hate change. But for the person who is on the journey of self-discovery, of knowing who they really are, they're not too bothered. The philosophy of Wu Wei, going with the flow, sounds absolutely ridiculous to the Western world. I mean, one of my pastors used to say that the salmon swims upstream, and so you should always fight the current and swim upstream and work hard. And of course there's value and truth in that, but how much more so is there value and wisdom in going with the flow? So for example, there's a wonderful analogy that Mr. Watts gave. Rather than using the oars on a boat to get your boat moving, why not just put the sails up and let nature blow those sails and travel on the wind? Make it easier on yourself. And that's in many ways what it's like for awakening and realizing your true self, the Atman. You just don't. You're just not so absorbed or self-absorbed, even though you are discovering yourself, true self. You become less absorbed. And in fact, there's that wonderful saying, I think by Mahatma Gandhi, I think it was, who said, "Lose yourself in the act of service in order to find yourself, or lose yourself in service of others to find yourself." But just let yourself go. Lose yourself. Play around for a little while with the idea that you are an eternal living being. Just play with it. Verse 17, those who cast off sin through this knowledge, absorbed in the Lord and established in Him as their one goal and refuge, are not reborn as separate creatures. And that's where we realize that we are the wave and we are reabsorbing ourselves back into the ocean. And we are not separate. That's the end of duality, that there is no inherent good and evil. There is no fundamental truth that this has always been beautiful and this has always been ugly. They are all just They are all just perceptions. Verse 18, those who possess this wisdom have equal regard for all. They see the same self in a spiritual aspirant and an outcast, in an elephant, a cow, and a dog. What a wonderful way to look at life, that everybody and everything is of equal value. This system, this belief of the Atman, that the soul is worth infinitely more than the world, makes compassion and kindness a real rich thing to do. What a wonderful way to look at people. I mean, I work with challenging behaviour, and I've seen staff freak out with working with clients. I've seen staff be really fucking nasty and talk horribly about clients. But for me, I see my clients as myself. I see God in myself, and I see God in my clients, and that makes for a nice bit of fucking quality of work. And so this idea, for example, of worship in Bhakti Yoga, where if you want to awaken yourself, you need to do all your work, all your actions in service, of sacrificial service to God. In many ways then, for example, working with a client, you are essentially offering your work to the client, and you're essentially seeing your client as your God and offering worship and service to them. And I want my service to God to be really fucking good. So with every client I work with, I try to do my best for them in a very person-centered way. And that is a form of worship, an act of service. It's a great philosophy. It's a great way to live your life. Verse 19. Such people have mastered life. With even mind, they rest in Brahman, who is perfect and is everywhere the same. So this wonderful impersonal aspect of God, that's called Brahman, where you can just rest and be cool and relaxed into Brahman, and you don't have to do anything. Like, in many ways, the idea of eternally worshipping God in heaven is quite scary and boring, because I don't want to be worshipping God all the time. I don't want to be, I'm going to get serious backache. I just want to go, just want to disappear. Not disappear in the suicidal sense, but disappear in that there is, just want to be in the eternal peaceful bliss, and that is it. I don't have to be anything, I don't have to justify anything, just this. And dissolve away. It's quite an ecstatic, in my own experiencing of that, it could be quite blissful and ecstatic. That's not to say that your consciousness ends, because in that dissolving, in that experiencing of being nothing, you're still something, because you're experiencing something. You're just dissolving the stuff in here. The stuff. It's such transcendental things. Can't explain it. Verse 20. They are not elated by good fortune, nor depressed by bad. So when you discover the Atman, change doesn't really affect you. You keep your peace. Like, for example, to live a life that's always based on pleasure will in the end be suffering, because you will lose that pleasure. You take the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible, a very honest bit of work written by King Solomon. I've created all these things. I've made all these beautiful gardens and sculptures. I've conquered millions of miles of land, and yet I've got to give it to someone else because I'm going to die. Oh, despair, vanity of vanities, Perhaps if Solomon started to just be more content within himself, he'd be all right. Not dependent on any external support, they realise the joy of the spiritual awareness. And, I know I don't mean to disrespect my Stoic brothers here and sisters, but on some of the Stoic groups that I've been part of on Facebook, which I'm not a part of anymore, they have a serious intolerance for God. I remember like people just ridiculing me on some of the comments I made when I was sharing some Stoic quotes, which were more God-based rather than this spiritual atheistic base. But they think, to be strong within, is exclusively Stoic. It's not. There's so many Stoic principles, for example, in like the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible. But this idea of discovery of who you really are makes you so strong that your legs are very, very much strengthened. With consciousness unified through meditation, they live in abiding joy. Pleasures conceived in the world of the senses have a beginning and an end and give birth to misery, Arjuna. The wise do not look for happiness in them. So that's a great bit of truth there. Why invest your time, or all your time, or most of your time, in the things that are going to perish? Why not invest time now in yourself, in discovery of who you really are? But those who overcome the impulses of lust and anger which arise in the body are made whole and live in joy. They find their joy, their rest, and their light completely within themselves. Which is wonderful, because that's where the true light is. It resolves and resides in you. If you are looking for God, if you are looking for happiness and contentment, look within. Start asking yourself inquiry-based questions and statements about who you really are. Are you just a load of chemicals that produces thoughts and feelings? Are you just a brain? Or are you a bit more than that? United with the Lord, they attain nirvana in Brahman. So there we have it. A little idea of what the Atman is all about. It's a little taste. By no means will any of these videos be scholarly and academic. They're just one bearded man with more grey hair as he gets older. Crikey. One opinion. But I hope it's useful. Peace out.